Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. My name is Jasmina from Jasmina of Astrology. Today, I have a special guest. We're going to talk about tracking income and finances in astrology. I'm always about trades. What can we trade? What can we sell? But before we start, I really want to introduce Jessica. She's a great astrologer coming from Adam Elenbaas School, and she's practicing medieval astrology techniques and Hellenistic, old traditional, very unknown for me. So I'm very excited to see her approach to finances and money through astrology. Jessica, welcome. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so great to hear that you're here. I saw your talk on OPA and I really was impressed on I think you did on Mars. Yes, it was really really good. I don't know you were doing a lot of things with writings and talks for many associations, but we before we dive into today's topics, please introduce yourself a little bit more. How did astrology found you, and what was your passion? Why medieval? Why Hellenistic?
Sure. As you mentioned, I studied with Adam Elenbaas. I did his program. I studied with him for 3 years, and I've been doing astrology readings since 2020. Part of what also helped sort of boost me into the public was that I was also a writer contributor for the Chani app,
Mm.
which I think, I don't know if it still is, but at least when it was released, it did become the number one most downloaded Apple app for astrology, at least in the United States. And I think it's still kind of up there. So that did kind of help kind of move me into everyone else's awareness as an astrologer. And
Cool.
a lot of that was just like serendipity for me because I work full time. I'm in the US. I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm a librarian as my day job.
Love it.
Yeah, so um yeah, I never really thought that I would do readings regularly or give talks and things like that. But yeah, so
It's
part of that
amazing.
is just yeah, part of that is just like me being Capricorn rising, and the Great Conjunction was very close to my ascendant, so here I am.
Perfect.
Um
Perfect. I think the world is a better place with you here for sure. So thank you very much. Yeah, I think the pandemic kind of discovered many gems. We kind of had time to stop a little bit
yep.
and tune in something larger than us, which I really love. And I think that's the best thing that came up out of this pandemic is all these people just joining and doing beautiful work and helping uh, this world to be a better place. I have a nine house stellium, so you will see very optimistic.
Same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Nice. And
Mhm.
perfect. Okay, so I thought you chose this topic today, and I think it's interesting. Everybody is always talking, when you come for a reading, it's either relationships or finances. So I think it will be very interesting to see your approach to looking into finances and income in charts. So please, stage is yours.
Yeah, sure. So there'll be a few moments where I kind of refer to some notes that I've taken in
No
preparation for
problem.
this. I think I wanted to talk about this topic because, as you mentioned, it's kind of like love and money, love and jobs are like the two things that people most practically want to seek out astrologers for, even if they aren't super familiar with the full range of things that astrology can do. And I don't currently offer an explicit money reading for
Okay.
clients, but it is something that I'm actively kind of feeling out how I might model something around that. And I've got a few sort of astrology friends and associates who I've asked if I could practice on their charts and do some kind of like prototyping with what a reading would look like that's focused just on like the ebbs and flows of income throughout a year. And
Mm.
I particularly like working, being here in Washington, D.C. I do get a lot of clients who are like they're freelance or they're consultants and they don't have like a typical 9 to 5 job where they know exactly, or at least they feel as if they know exactly when the next paycheck comes, if it'll be a large one, a small one. And a lot of the things with astrology, in my opinion, really kind of with the Hellenistic techniques that I use, at at minimum, I can assess what someone's sort of baseline is, and then I will be able most of the time to at least see when there's anomalies to that baseline. I won't be able most of the time to tell somebody, oh, this paycheck is going to be $1,000,000.
Okay.
But I'll be able to tell them this will be similar. Like, when was the last time that you had maybe like an overtime check? Or when was the last time that you won money from a scratch off lottery ticket? And I can look for those same kind of patterns and give them an idea of, this next little thing that you get will be an incremental increase of some kind that's a little bit similar to what happened this last time. I can
That is
kind of yeah.
that is actually very interesting. I know that most of our modern astrologers always go to the second house, sixth house, tenth house, and kind of blend sometimes eight, depending on what is it. So I know that you have different approach. That's why you can be so precise. So
Yeah.
I'm so curious to I know you're using the lots. I think you mentioned, right? So
Yeah, and
where are they coming from?
yeah, so I can get into those in more detail, and I kind of plan to.
Okay,
I
cool.
use when I'm tracking specifically the ebbs and flows of money,
Mhm,
and I have many other colleagues who do this.
mhm.
I'm using the lot of buying and selling.
Mm,
And if anybody has like Astro Gold software, that lot is an automatic lot that you can kind of plop in there and use. Otherwise, you can look up the calculation for it, which is also publicly available on AstroSeek.
yeah.
And this lot was one that was used. It was documented quite heavily in Abu Mashar. There were a lot of other like medieval Persian astrologers who used it, and sometimes they called it the lot of businesses. Valens also used the same calculation, and he referred to it as the lot of necessity, which is a different lot than the lot of necessity that's often.
Before you move on, I know that
Yeah.
maybe of many of us will be
Yep.
confused. What are lots
But
can you
yeah.
explain it a little bit more just for us to understand what is a lot?
Yeah, good question. So the lots were used very heavily in the throughout the medieval within medieval astrology techniques, particularly by Islamic medieval astrologers. Persian astrologers really use them, but astrologers all over Hellenistic history and in Egyptian astrologers as well have also used them. And they also were popularized in parts of Asia as well,
Mhm.
through one of the ancient astrologers, Dorotheus. Well, Dorotheus wasn't super ancient, but a lot of his work did get perpetuated up through like the Silk Road routes and things like that. So it was also being lots were also used pretty heavily in some parts of Asia. Um, but essentially, a lot sometimes it's also referred to um, as a part. So you'll hear Arabic lots, Arabic parts. You'll also just hear them called the lots and parts. They weren't necessarily invented by
Mhm,
Arabic speaking
mhm,
people, but they were popularized by them. But they're mathematical points on a chart, and you can create these things or use them with anything really. So for instance, you could find you could calculate a lot by taking the distance between the sun and Mars in someone's chart, and then taking that distance and calculating it out from the ascendant. And that
mhm,
point that's created is the
mhm,
lot. And so you'll get things like, for instance, lots that are derived from the distance between Mars and Saturn would have connotations of difficulty or strife or
mhm.
illness or hard work. That's kind of how you would envision the meaning or significance of a lot.
Okay, so
But
so those are calculations based on the ascendant and the position on the planet. So let's say that there were ancient calculations that uh, we forgot about all of this, right? I'm so happy that we actually are reviving all this knowledge, this secret language of astrology, which is so helpful. So it's like part of fortune. Many of us know part of fortune. So that's also a calculation between the sun, moon, and the ascendant, right? Where your kind of luck is. So this is specifically then for business, for selling. Like you can go combination of planets and say, oh, that's amazing. I know a little bit, but I don't know much. So great, I'm listening.
yeah, yeah, and it's what's kind of cool is this lot of buying and selling. It's calculated using that lot of fortune. So the calculation for a lot of buying and selling is the distance between the lot of fortune
Mhm.
and the lot of spirit, and you take that distance and you project it from the ascendant. Um,
Okay.
but but that same calculation, it's utilized, or I will say it's documented by various astrologers throughout history for different things. It's not exclusively buying and selling. Like I mentioned, like
Mhm.
some other ancient astrologers have referred to that same calculation as the lot of poverty and middling wit. There's also these connotations of like despair and fraud. And in day charts, it's also the same exact calculation of a lot that's frequently called the lot of basis, that has a lot to do with harmony, having passion for worldly things, even striving towards or getting recognition of nobility. Um, and I mentioned this background just to key people into if you're going to use this lot, kind of think broad picture about it. Like, yeah, I use it fast and hard for tracking money, and it does seem to work that way in most charts, or at least in my experience. But when we're thinking about tracking money, we're also tracking all these other things. Like money is a part, it's so embedded into the nature of being human and being human within society. So if you're tracking the exchange or flow of money, it makes sense that it would also speak to how in harmony we are, how connected to society we are, how much we have a sense of foundation and all of these sort of connotations too. So it's it's open to play with, it's open to kind of look at, it's open to consider um, that there are also people, for instance, who I haven't experienced this yet in my own practice, but I've thought about, for instance, people who do not have their own sense of income. Like they don't get actual paychecks, but perhaps they're a caretaker or something like that. And I would assume that this lot would still work for them, but as an astrologer, you'll have to think about the context to which
Mhm.
their sense of financial stability, what that means to them.
Yeah, yeah. It's always good to have a context with the client to know what are they doing, what kind of, maybe they have multiple incomes, maybe they're self-employed. So that also impacts on what you're going to tell them. That's interesting. I know there's a lot of lots. Do you know how many?
There's over 500 and something that have been documented. Yeah.
I find that that's why I didn't dig in at those yet because I find it like, oh my God, overwhelming. But I know that's interesting. I know there's a lot of victory and there's a bunch of
Yep.
other interesting things that I kind of little digged in. It's so cool. Okay, so finances and money. So is it the same thing even? What do you think when we look at it?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And it's something that I've thought about too. Like in just in the context of a natal chart, I think I have seen various astrologers talk about certain houses specifically being like liquid assets, specific houses being investments, specific houses being like speculations and gambling and those sort of things. And I also will defer to some of those things, like especially if I'm working with somebody who I know is a trader or somebody who I know has a gambling habit.
So
Like,
would you
yeah.
look at traders in the eighth house, second, fifth? What
I
would you?
I usually put them in the fifth. Yep.
The fifth, or even the
Yep.
traders. Oh, I know to one of the soldiers that they told me that all the investments they look in the second house. They don't look in the eighth because they say it's the income of that person. Because they, make dividends and it's like their income. So they look at the second or the
Yeah.
eighth, which is interesting. I've always thought, there's other people, but somebody else is handling your money, but it's still your money. It's not other people's money. This is a lot of little tricks, right? When you think about it, yeah,
Yep.
it makes more sense, right? To look at somebody's investments in the second house, not eight. So eight is literally nothing to do with you, how you make money, kind of, right?
Somewhat. Yeah. And I also
Yeah.
will I end up using the 11th house quite often too,
Yes.
because the 11th house is also the government's money
Mm.
or your institution's money. So for people who are doing grant writing, I will also see connections to the 11th very frequently, or people who have to apply for federal funding for this or that thing.
That's interesting. I would do it in the eight, for example, grants. But what
Mm.
is interesting, you're opening my mind. I look at the 11th house sometimes from, when people, you know, sixth house is what we daily do if we work for somebody, the paycheck that we get. But, if your career, if you have some kind of reputation or something larger, then you receive money because of it. I would look at the 11th house as well, kind of it's second
True.
part of the 10th. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very
'Cause you
specific, right?
definitely get like honors and awards will also be like that kind
Right?
of thing. Like getting
Yeah.
a bonus for a special job done.
Right? Yeah, like like that's it. Or yeah, or if you get a prize for something and it comes with the money from.
Yeah,
Yeah. I know it's very interesting. Okay, I'll let you go. Tell me more how you do
for
what your
sure.
practice is. I'm a lot of Gemini. I'm a Gemini sun and a moon and a Virgo rising, so I'm very mercurial. So I apologize for interruptions. Go ahead.
No, you're great. Yeah. No, my whole stellium is all Virgo and I'm Gemini Mars. So interruptions are they're in my own brain with myself. So
Cool.
yeah, so I use this a lot of buying and selling. And what I like to do the most with it is actually work with clients who have lost a job or in between jobs, and I will use it for those who are listening who are familiar with a lot of spirit. A lot of spirit is often used for tracking like vocations and jobs and things like that. So I will try to corroborate the things I see with a lot of spirit and the things I see with a lot of buying and selling. And that's how I will often be able to pinpoint when someone gets like their first paycheck from the next job that they inevitably or eventually get. That is something that I appreciate having the ability sometimes to get that specific with it. Especially because for a lot of people, applying to jobs and getting employment is such a long and arduous, complicated process. Like sometimes they might have some prospects going on, but at the end of the day, they need to know when is my next paycheck. So that's something that I like to do with it quite a
So
bit.
so would you use it just for getting money or also for getting a job if they don't have one? Or
Right. So what I'm doing is I'm using like a lot of spirit to track
okay.
what looks like peaks and valleys in employment. And if I see the same things being corroborated from a lot of buying and selling, like I'll often see what looks like money coming in from a lot of buying and selling, and then I will kind of work backwards to see like, okay, when's it look like they probably interviewed or got hired? And then I can kind of tell them like, okay, this is the time frame that we're thinking at. And sometimes that might even be enough information to give someone an idea about which job they probably choose or get the offer from, if I'm able to give them that timeline.
That is so cool. That's very interesting. I know it fascinates me. So what about people who are self-employed and then they have clients? And so that's a little bit different, right, from getting a paycheck. Would that also be using those lots?
I think, yeah, it'll often show up that way because it's similar to people who are kind of like freelance and things
Mhm.
like that. And in those situations, I also sometimes I can also assist with giving people ideas as to who would be an ideal client for them based on their natal chart and maybe sometimes a combination of what's in their solar return. One common method that the medieval Islamicate astrologers used is that they would consider the 11th house from someone's lot of fortune, and that 11th house would be how one sort of gets recognition or fame or praise based on kind of what they're here to do, sort of a thing. So that 11th house from your lot of fortune can often be a place to look for who gets me, who always gives me, who like receives me well. And so, for instance, if you have Saturn there or Mars there, or it's a well dignified planet or a strong planet or something, I might be able to tell people, you might do well if you target your audience towards Mars-like people or Saturn-like people, specifically maybe like older women or former military or athlete people. Like these are sort of like a Saturn group or a Mars group that can sometimes help out
Yeah.
marketing strategies.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking I in my chart I need to work with mothers. I never had actually I never marketed that, explored, but maybe I should. Now you just confirmed what I was kind of a little bit of exploring as well. And of course, you use the whole sign houses just for everybody who is,
Sure.
for all the traditional, right? The whole
Hmm.
sign is used for the traditional techniques because it works the way they used to do it. That's how we should do it. I agree with that. So if anybody wants to know which house system it's used, interesting. Okay, so clients a little bit different. So for example, contracts is that the same as a client, like having a contract coming money, like 6 months contract if you're a freelancer, or 1 year contract or something, or having a client one-on-one? Is it like a different little bit of energy,
Hmm.
or is it the same?
It's a good question. When I'm using when I'm using zodiacal releasing techniques with these lots, which is the technique that I use with the lots, and I can do like a demonstration, um, I that it will often be uh, it really doesn't matter kind of what the nature of the money coming in is like. If like it's sort of like you get a paycheck, you get a paycheck. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter if it's connected to a 4-year contract or this or that, typically. Um,
Now you
what
sorry, yeah, now you opened up a new Pandora's question for me because this is my brain. So so it's like releasing it, you can calculate it from different lots.
You can do it with all the lots, yeah. And you can do it from
All
sign.
500? No.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Sorry. Just
Yeah, no, it's a good
blows my
question. But
blows my
um
mind.
yeah, that being said, there are some nuances to it. Like for example, if you're doing zodiacal releasing with a lot of buying and selling, um your I think is it okay if I screen share?
Yes, I was gonna say if you have,
Yeah.
if you want to, participants, okay, I think you can share. Try it. I think I gave you permission. Did
All
I?
right. Yeah, 1 second.
I think I gave you permission. So let's see if it
Yeah,
works.
I have to click on I'm getting the thing that I want to share up first.
Okay. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
okay.
No problem.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I think this is fascinating. Astrology is a subject that you can learn if you had like 10 lifetimes. Still, you wouldn't learn everything there is. And my Gemini brain, I think this is the best thing I found in my life. It's just so it's never ending. Oh, perfect.
yeah. So I have permission to show my mom's chart. Uh,
Okay, cool. Okay, cool.
yeah. So one thing I wanted to share is in terms of like trying to assess where is the money coming from or what might it be connected to. Sometimes, not always, and sometimes it gets really super nuanced and you have to have like a really close, intimate relationship with the
Mhm.
client or the person that you're doing this for to really do this with a lot of accuracy. But so when I'm doing zodiacal releasing, so for example, my mom's lot of buying and selling is at 6 Libra. So in this software,
Yeah,
when I
that's my lot of spirit. I think 6 Libra. I think
oh, very cool.
that's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah, very cool. So I'm gonna share another screen here. So what this is my mom's zodiacal releasing periods from that lot. And so here, this is releasing from Libra. So one thing that happened recently in like 2021, um, 2022. Yes. Okay. So this was one of my parents, I'm lucky that my parents are not opposed to me doing astrology, but a lot of it is like just not of interest to them. Um,
Okay. Still, they give you the data to work on, which is
yeah.
amazing. Excellent.
But this was one of the rare times that my mom ever actually did explicitly ask me to do astrology for her. And my mom she's had a cancer diagnosis for some years. She's doing fine.
Oh, okay.
But she's had this cancer diagnosis, dealing with all of that, and her day job were just really hard, very hard. And my mom's at 57 right now. So she doesn't qualify for full retirement quite yet in the States.
Yeah, she's young.
But
That's young. Trust me.
yeah, but she felt like it was time. And so
Okay.
she reached out to me and asked, she wanted to know if I quit my job, will we financially be able to do that? And so I pulled this up and sort of kind of,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, I had to interrupt. So why did you choose a lot of selling and buying and not something else? For example, something, there's probably a
Mhm.
lot for retirement or some kind of lot. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, well, I did look at her, I looked at her solar return. I
Hmm.
also looked at her zodiacal releasing from the lot of spirit.
Okay.
Um, but I went to this first because her specific concern, and also my own, I won't lie.
Finances.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I was mostly concerned if you aren't working, are you guys going to be okay financially? Especially with her having medical bills and things like that. Um, and so and she asked this question like very early November of 2022. And she did end up leaving her job within a month of asking me. Like, even though she asked me, she kind of had already made up her mind, I
Okay.
think. But this shows here what you can kind of see on this period where she's making this decision is she had a peak period and also a loosing of the bond. That's what these little
Hmm.
asterisk and plus sign mean. Um, the the main thing to know about a peak period combined with a loosening of the bond is just to know that this is a period of time where you would expect to see an abrupt change in the pattern. That could be positive or negative, but there's something inherent about the way that my mom receives income or stability financially abruptly changing pattern here, and there being action-oriented events around those circumstances. Um, it isn't just like it randomly changes, like there's
Okay.
real kind of shifts in movement. And going back to like, can you tell kind of where the money is connected to? Well, when she switches to this Aquarius period, what that means is that there's something about the nature of her income being tied to Saturn. And in her chart, Saturn is the third triplicity lord of the eighth house. And so Saturn does have these connections to um it has these connections to inheritance, investments, and what I would consider to be things like Social Security and
Mhm.
so like social programs.
And
So it was in
sorry,
that.
so you wouldn't look at the 11th house for uh pension.
Yeah, I would. Um,
Okay. Just
but yeah, well, and it's a little bit complicated with my mom's chart because Jupiter rules her eighth and her 11th.
okay. I got it.
Yeah, and then so like
Yeah.
Saturn has this triplicity, and we didn't talk about triplicity too much, but triplicity is like a specific
Yeah, just
form of
learn
dignity.
the table. I just tell people learn the table. You have to learn
Yeah,
it. That's it. You can't even just learn it.
yeah, totally fine. And also at the same time, what I do is I look to see what's happening by transit during this period of time.
Mhm.
And with my mom experiencing Saturn in her 10th house, as she's having this loosing of the bond peak period to Aquarius, my mom has a night chart. So Saturn is kind of like a big baddie in her chart by transit and things like that. I was, I was like, before I even talked to her, I texted my dad immediately and said, Mom's going to quit her job. So, like, just so you know, like, um,
Uh,
so yeah, and I was able to assess that based on a few things, but specifically with a lot of buying and selling, it indicated the likelihood that She's having an abrupt change in the nature and quality of her income, and it's likely changing from coming from a job and being more about programs um or like retirement money.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That is interesting. Yeah. So yeah, so if her retirement money is tied up to some kind of uh, investment fund, then it will be from the eighth maybe coming. It's just yeah, it's a little bit like that. So depending
Yep.
on uh,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. So that's how you look at you use triplicity, releasing. Well, so there's a lot of
Whole bunch of things.
coverage here. Interesting. Do you have any other examples? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I could also one of the fun ones with my own chart. Um,
Just because I'm
I-
curious. Okay, people learn through examples the most. So this is very vivid. So exactly what you look. Solar return, you look from the releasing, the zodiac releasing, you look at transits, and then triplicity is involved. So there's like a lot of good explanations here. Okay, cool.
yeah, I found some examples that were also kind of interesting with my own chart, and I have some like famous people that I also plan to demonstrate some things with.
Mhm.
With my own chart, um, one thing that I found here,
So I didn't want to put you on the spot. I just find it's interesting to
yeah, no, I
hear.
agree. I'm just referring to my notes really quick. Uh, so in terms of like finding employment or something like that, um, I was able to find when I started my first job, which was when I was in high school. And
Mhm.
so so my lot of buying and selling is in Leo. And when I look at, let's see here, the date, I'm looking for July 17th of 2007.
There it is. Mhm. Yeah, so guys, there's lots of levels in zodiac releasing, but that's another topic. We can talk about it next time. It's a level one, two, three, four.
Yeah, so I was able to see I got my very first job working in a fast food business. We sold roast beef sandwiches.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And I got hired. Well, I got my first paycheck uh,
Mm.
on July 17th of 2007. And like
Okay.
on that very day, I had this loosing of the bond on level 4, loosing of the bond on level 3. And if
Wow.
Yeah, and then if I go to
Mm.
actual transits, which I'll switch back over to, um, this also kind of makes some sense that I would get like my first paycheck or job or something like that around this time, because I was having this like exact Uranus sextile to the ruler of my second and the first. Um,
Mhm.
and oddly, maybe even like comically about this, like um, some nuances with my chart is I have this like Mars in the sixth house. So sixth house planets can be associated with like service industry jobs and things like that.
Especially in Gemini. Especially.
Yeah, yeah. And like by transit, like Mars also is about to make a trine to my natal Saturn, and it's like in the sign of like cattle and things like that. Like what am I doing? I'm making roast beef sandwiches. Like there's some
It's also
comedy.
money. It's also money.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I love it. Comedy. Yeah, yeah. Rose beef sandwich. I love it.
Mhm.
But I can see why you're a librarian. Like just
Yeah.
you get your
Yeah.
Mars and your Virgo placements in the ninth. Like yes, and
Yeah. And I specifically am employed by the federal government. So like it's yeah.
yeah, and it's a structured company, which is Capricorn. Like I can see it. Like I can see, and you still talk to people, um, and find them research and to dig deep with heaven and Scorpio. Anyway, I
Yeah.
digress. But anyway, it's just interesting
Yeah.
to see how your chart, how it actually your job reflects your chart just by
Mhm.
looking at it. Nice.
It's very
Cool.
literal. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. I love that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And for people who like are new to this and just kind of want to play around with stuff, really when I'm using this in my own practice, I'm really just looking for like these sort of loosening of the bonds, peak periods, these sort of things. Though there are like deep, significant meanings to each of those things independently. You can get much more honed in on like the nuances of like what does it mean for me to go from a moon ruled period to an Aquarius ruled period, like all of that. There is meaning there. But when I'm dealing with a client and I'm just trying to pinpoint like when are you getting a paycheck and what does it look like more money? Does it look like less money? Does it look like money from a new source or something that you haven't done before? I'm just watching for patterns most of the time. Like I know here, I started my very first job during a level 3 Capricorn loosing, followed by an Aquarius peak. So I know in my mind that any successive Capricorn to Aquarius loosings and peaks in my life might look something like getting a new job or working in the service industry or something like that. Like this kind of just builds up testimony about like
So
the the nuances.
will this repeat in your other periods later in life?
It could.
It
Like
could.
it
Okay.
it really all depends. Like, and I haven't assessed all of my stuff. One thing I found also that was kind of neat is September 22nd of 2011 was also an interesting time for me. Wait a minute, that was
So this plus means this is specifically to the lot of selling and buying. This plus, that's the release. This is specifically connected to that lot.
um technically it's connected to my lot of fortune. The pluses
Mhm.
mean peak periods and
Okay.
you have peak periods. Anything is a peak period if it's a sign that's angular to your lot of fortune. So my lot of fortune is in Scorpio, so the fixed signs will always be peak periods, no matter what lot I'm using.
Okay. Cool. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm gonna learn so much. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So and then September this September 22nd of 2011. Yeah, this was also kind of interesting for me. Here we go. So what happened on this day, where I was on peak periods on level 2, level 3, level 4, et cetera, et cetera. What happened on this day, I'll go back to my chart to show the transits. So you might think, oh, these are peak periods. This is a good thing. But in terms of like thinking about context with a client and things like that, what actually happened on this day, Mars just moved into my eighth house. And I
Mm.
had an exalted Saturn in my 10th and also Venus in my 10th. Um, what happened here is that I was still a college student during this time. And up until this point, I had been working a couple different campus jobs. But the reason why I qualified, or one of the reasons why I qualified for those jobs was because my family was at a certain income level. So I was able to apply for like federal work study programs at my college campus based on my family's income level. What happened is that my dad made too much money this year for me to qualify for a campus job. And so it's this weird sort of situation where in my ZR periods, I'm like on all these peaks
Mhm.
where my financial standing is like better, but this was actually the only time in my whole life since I was 17 that I didn't have a job. I ended up not being able to find anything that still worked with my schedule and things like that. And I didn't have any personal income for this year. But what happened instead is um my parents agreed to just kind of support me, help me with groceries, this kind of thing. I was lucky that they could, but I doubled down on all of my extracurriculars and did some unpaid internships in the meantime. So it was like this mixed kind of thing where my
Mhm.
status was up high, but my actual personal income was non-existent, other than my parents helping me, which is nice. It's better
Is-
than nothing.
Yeah, cool. So is that because also Mars is a day chart? Mars is a little bit harsher, because he came to the eighth house, that's why maybe is that.
Yeah, like I was literally like every 2 weeks I'd have to like message my mom and dad and be like well what happened is I also had student loans that I took out. So like they were sending me some of their own money, but also they kind of kept my student loans for me, and I would email them and be like, "Hey, send me like $100 from my student loans," and like,
Yeah,
oh,
interesting. Yeah, so it's kind of like you didn't lose, you didn't gain. It just wasn't the way, it didn't kind of, the
mm,
way you wanted it, but it still wasn't bad. Like you didn't lose anything, in a sense, right? You just, you know,
mm,
tweaked it a little bit. So that's also interesting. Yeah, yeah. This is a great example that not everything is black and white. When clients come to you for a consultation, they feel it's gonna be, is it this or is it that? Like it's not always, you just can tell them yes, it is or not.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think had I and so I was on all of these peak levels from in the sign of Scorpio. So if I had been working with a client during this time with my chart, I I would have I being totally honest, I wouldn't have been able to tell them straightforwardly, yes, you will be employed, no, you won't be. This is a type of chart where I would have just told them it's going to be very mixed, and that's the best I can tell you because um
And it was mixed.
yeah, yeah, because Jupiter was aspecting Scorpio, so that's good, but Mars was squaring it.
Yeah.
Like you got Saturn in your 10th, you got Venus in your 10th. I wouldn't have been able to figure this out.
Yeah, yeah, but it's very interesting. I love this example. This is exactly, guys, what we are telling you about. It's not always so black and white. It's beautiful. I have to love astrology. So just to summarize, you use this for jobs, money, steady income, free income. I mean, investment, all type of everything related to job, vocation, and money. Perfect.
Yeah. And
Well,
and for people who are interested in investments and trading, I
mm,
but I definitely do not I don't personally have the skill set to give
mhm,
solid advice on those things because I'm not someone who does those things. But I have played around with, for example, like if I were to use my own chart, and I have done this experimentally on my own, but I've looked for like for example, I have this peak period coming up in
mhm,
2025 in March, and possibly this, depending on what the transits are doing in this August time frame, I would I would maybe consider making a big investment, like
mhm.
buying stock or something like that when I'm in a peak period like this, if the sign of Aquarius happens to be receiving trines from the benefics during this time. So if Jupiter's hanging around, if Venus is hanging around, or if I see that Venus or Jupiter are hanging around my own natal Saturn, since Saturn is connected to Aquarius.
Mm.
So though
Okay.
yeah, you can, and for people who like day trade, you can toy around in these level fours because they change every 4 days or so
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
So
Yes.
that's just
Yeah.
food
So
for
the
thought.
so the bigger periods are stages in your life, and you go smaller periods, and then months, and then days, kind of like
Hmm.
years, months, days. Okay. Just for to satisfy my curiosity,
Yeah.
losing of the bond. What does that mean? I heard that expression so many times, but
Yeah.
I understand peak period, but what is losing of the bond?
Yeah. So, um, symbolically speaking, you can kind of, if you're looking at zodiacal releasing periods, you'll see that they go in order. So it's like Venus, Libra,
Hmm.
Scorpio, and so forth. But every so often, you'll get to a time period where they skip one. So for here, it went Libra, or sorry, it went Leo to Pisces. It went out of order. Um,
Oh, it's
there,
opposite of Virgo. It's supposed to be Virgo, but it's opposite. So it
yeah,
will repeat. So that is that the reason, or why is this? Is it just a calculation?
it's based on the math, and
Okay, okay,
it's been
that's it.
too long since I've studied it.
No, no, it's okay. I mean, there's a mathematical calculation based on the planets and probably the synodic cycles and stuff.
Yep,
Okay, just
exactly.
that's all we need to know. It's based for a reason. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, because it starts with Virgo, so it should be Virgo again, but then it's losing the bond and it goes in reverse. Ah, okay,
Yeah. And
cool.
and so symbolically speaking, this is when you would have a break in a pattern of some sort. Like we were going along as normal, and then all of a sudden, like there's like a gear shift.
Is it the
And
bad or good? Is it bad or good?
it can be either one. It
Ah,
can totally be either one. Sometimes, sometimes you'll hear astrologers refer to these as like a leveling up period. And I've definitely seen loosings play out that way, where, for instance, you got a promotion during a loosing of the bond, or you made like a great acquisition during a loosing of the bond of some sort. You can also get fired during loosings of the bond, like because really all it is a change in a pattern, but a very significant one. And really, as astrologers, the best thing that you can do is you can, like I mentioned before, you can look to see what happened the last time you had a loosing of the bond from those signs on any level, and think about, is that likely to happen again in the same way? Sometimes it plays out in the same way. Um, like if you got fired from a Leo to a Pisces period one time, maybe you get fired again. Or it might not be that you get fired always during these things, but maybe it's more about the nature of your work changed. Like on the surface, you might have said, "Oh, well, I got fired during that period." But if you really think about it, maybe it wasn't just you getting fired. Maybe it was also you changing from marketing to sales, or changing from a supervisory position to a research one. And
Uh-huh. Okay.
like we tend to remember the worst case things, but some you can ask a lot of questions first before you really hone down on like what exactly is the
And
pattern break.
yeah, when you would look at transits or any other techniques that would confirm, what's happening. So it's always like if there's
Yeah.
some kind of change, you always need, that's at least, but that's how I do it. When I see something, I need at least two more, three, you know, different techniques to confirm what might be the case. Oh, this is so interesting. Excellent. So is this your favorite thing to do from all the readings? Do you like this the best or
Um, it's hard to say because
okay.
for those who have maybe like you did, who've heard some of the other talks that I've given or presentations, um I can definitely kind of wax poetic about like certain things. I'm Mars and Saturn are two things that I always end up talking about even when I don't mean to. Um, and and I come from a, a philosophy academic background before astrology. And so there's a lot of there's a lot of crossover
Mhm.
philosophically, spiritually, that I have a lot of heart towards. But at the same time, I do really enjoy doing things like this because it's fast, it's practical, it gets people the information they need to know like right now. I like giving people
Mhm.
concrete information to help them make choices and decisions on things. I also practice horary astrology.
Mhm.
And so, in an ideal world, if somebody is really struggling with unemployment, I would love for them to ask me, like to ask a horary question, when do I get a job or do I get a job? And then I can poke around in their zodiacal releasing and see if I can corroborate what I saw in the horary question too.
I love that. That's on my list to learn. I know something, but it's still
Yeah.
next year. I have like a you should see my to-do list. It's a Virgo rising. What I need to. But this was so fascinating to anyway.
Mhm.
Before we finish, do you want to add anything? Because I know we can talk a lot, but it's been an hour almost, so I don't want to waste your time. But please let me know if you have anything to add. What do you want to still?
Yeah.
What message do you want to convey about this
You
topic?
um, I think we hit all the things that I was really, aiming to cover. So that's great. I think what I would add for anyone who's studying astrology or just is interested as like a hobby, feel free to play with these things. Like they're a joy. The lots, there's a lot of, like documented textbook analyses that you can read about, like what Alberini was doing with the lots and the medieval times and whatever else. But truly these things are they're there to observe and poke at and think more. You can think about them more abstractly, and I encourage people to do that. Like, and that's kind of why I did want to mention that there's all of these other calculations that are the exact same thing as this calculation, and what one ancient astrologer might assign to the meanings of a lot of buying and selling, another one might not have. And I think it's important to think about those significations as if those astrologers are our peers. They're not like some elders that's
Yeah, yeah,
strictly correct about all the things.
yeah. That's why I always tell everybody, each astrologer can give you a different perspective on the same thing just because we use our own little thing, and that's the beauty of it. I had my chart read from many different people, different, and I always learn and see something new that I never heard before. I'm like, wow. So it fascinates me. So I always encourage people to kind of, yes, dig deep from another perspective, as you said, and find another point of view. Excellent. Thank you so much. Before we finish, please tell everybody what you have now ongoing. I know you said you did the readings, but where can people find you, and what are you offering?
Yeah, so my handle on all social media platforms is the same. It's Dendralathia. My website is dendralathia.com. Um, I'm sure that the spelling of that will be available somewhere.
I
Because
will put everything in the
yeah,
description below, all the links to your Instagram and your website
yeah.
and everything. So yeah,
Um,
you can find it.
I'm I'm super available over email. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Mhm.
Um, you can just you can direct message me, but it will get buried and I'll take a bit to get around to it. I prefer email.
Cool.
I have readings open all the way through December right now. Um, so if you have a fall birthday or a winter birthday and you really want to snag a solo return with me, do it now because they fill up. And I will also be at the NORWAC conference that will be in Seattle at the end of May. So anybody who goes there, feel free to say hi.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I won't be coming this year, but anyway, that's great. Yes, good to know. Perfect. I think I'm gonna go to the Capital College. They have the in Niagara in the because I live just across the border, so I literally live on
Okay,
near
cool.
Niagara Falls Canadian side. So I'm gonna go, and they have in fall they have a thing there, so I'm gonna be there if anybody wants to come for Capital College celebration day. I think they're celebrating I don't know how many years ago. Anyway, so I'm gonna pop by definitely because it's literally in my home. So cool. I really want to thank you so much for this. This was eye-opening for me, and I'm gonna dig deeper. And you really kind of put my juices up to learn more on this. Thank you so much. And yes, please follow Jessica and contact her if you need more information or anything. Thank you so much. See you soon. See you, everybody. Bye bye.